Hi, we're the Scroll team from eSafety and we're going to talk about community and identity online. I'm Patience.
I'm Chloe.
And I'm Dante.
How have you been able to find your community online?
I would probably just say, I feel like my kind of community, it's honestly just with my friends and it's pretty close to me personally. I don't venture out too much. So yeah, I just stick pretty close with the people that I already know. Dante?
I think that my community almost shifted a lot in lockdown, and when we had that 2 years where we were kind of stuck inside, and I feel like a lot of the ways I found new people that I'm pretty close with now was through online and through places like Instagram and TikTok, and through places like general social media platforms that allowed me to connect with people that I didn't even know kind of existed. I was in high school, I was kind of in this creative space, and a lot of people that I went to school with didn't weren't really about that. They were kind of just doing their own thing, but they weren't kind of into the creative stuff or into fashion stuff or into artsy stuff. They were just kind of doing their own thing, which is fine. I was friends with a lot of them, but I kind of wanted to make more friends that were creative and doing that kind of stuff. And through some of these social media platforms, especially through lockdown, you get to know, especially platforms that have like Reels and TikToks that let you discover stuff that you're not even following. Through TikTok, you find I found out about this whole side of Melbourne where I'm from, that there are all these creatives that are creating all this cool stuff, and they're doing art, and they're being self-expressive, and they're doing all this cool stuff that kind of I didn't even know existed in my own home city. But through social media, it allowed me to kind of know that those places existed. And then the way that I kind of built that up is I was just trying to stay as connected as possible. So if anything kind of aligned with my values, I loved anything that was creative, anything that was kind of unique, and just someone trying to hustle and kind of do something different and be creative and be self-expressive and just kind of be themselves in their own way. I'll just follow them and just connect with that. And then from that, you'd see people tagged who did this stuff, and you'd see people who did this stuff, and you kind of slowly build this knowledge of people and places around your own area. So it starts online, but then you can kind of translate that back into in-person experiences. And then once we came out of lockdown, because I'd spent so much time online kind of curating what I saw and what I didn't want to see, kind of controlling what I wanted to see, I was trying to almost shift my feed to only show me stuff that was creative stuff in Melbourne instead of just the random other stuff that I was following before. When stuff did start to open back up, I was already kind of in and involved in a lot of those places just because I'd seen the stuff over the last 2 years, and then I could start going out and start going to these and meeting these people in real life. But it all started online and just kind of on my own, just following stuff that I was interested in, and just kind of really immersing yourself in that community that you kind of want to be in.
Yeah. So do you feel like you kind of can really be who you are and your authentic self through the online community that you've got in?
Yeah. And I think that was probably one of the most important parts for me. And I think it's important for people that are in high school as well, as it is sometimes when you're in high school, your worldview is so small. You only know however many 20 people in your class, 100 people in your year level, and you feel that there's nothing outside of that. You feel it's just that is all that there is. But you can't even comprehend how many people there are in your town, let alone in your city. There is always someone out there who is on the kind of the same wavelength as you. You just have to find it. And I think that through putting yourself in spaces like that online, it leads to opportunities in person where you can kind of develop this friendship group and friendship circles, and just good things will come your way if you put out good energy into the world. So if you're following people and you're being supportive and you're being positive, eventually someone's going to notice that you've been involved in this community for so long, and you're going to relate on stuff that you've seen and relate on shared experiences and stuff that's happened. You're going to know all of that together, and then it becomes that's how you become a part of a community.
Yeah. That's really interesting what you said, because I grew up in kind of a smaller town sort of area, and it was predominantly people that just don't look like me. So apart from like my cousins and my family, like I was never ever seeing anyone that looked like me. And I felt like it wasn't until I actually went online and saw that there were other people, women of colour, other black women just doing their own thing and being themselves, that I felt like, oh, I'm not the weird one. Because like for so long I thought that I was just so weird, but really I just have a different like cultural background. Do you kind of feel like you have faced like any pressure from the online world?
I think maybe a little bit, because I'm not the most out there online person. I'm pretty private. I keep much more to myself than a lot of other people. So I definitely feel like it's kind of, I don't know if I'd call it pressure, but just kind of, oh, am I not being online like the right way? Like, do I need to be sharing more? Do I need to be doing more? Do I need to be using social media, or just being online so much more in my everyday life? So it can be kind of confusing, because a lot of young people do use, and it's so amazing that they can find these really awesome communities or as a platform to share different parts of their life. But I've just never really done that. And I think, again, I'm from like a smaller kind of town, like more older people. So it's more kind of regional, so it's a different vibe to being in the city, where you're surrounded by all these different cultures and different people, and everyone has something different to say. Whereas I've grown up kind of around just the same old little town, so it's just different for me in that perspective.
Yeah, and I think did you ever feel that there was like a fear of like you're missing out on something by kind of not being in social media, or is it more like you're just happy that you've kind of grown with a group of friends or with a community that you can really grow with, and you kind of don't need to kind of search it out? Like, you've been blessed enough to be able to, like, you don't feel like you're missing out by not being insanely active on social media, or like...
Yeah, I feel like there is like definitely an element of like, oh, like there's so many people that, you know, find so much on there, and that there is that element of, oh, like, am I missing out on all these great things? But then it's never really been like innate for me. Like, yeah, I really want to get out there and I really want to get online.
But I feel like that's super important as well, because I feel like, especially as a young person, sometimes it's almost like you always like want what you don't have, and you kind of can't take what you do have, like, for like you kind of take it for granted. Like, so even if like you're a young person, there's almost like a pressure that you need to be like appreciate the people that you do have around you. If you got that from day one, that's great. Like, that's awesome. Appreciate those people. And you don't kind of have to feel like you're missing out. Like, it's just like, that's awesome that you have that around you already.
Yeah, and I think it's really great that nowadays that, like, you've just got so much access to be able to find people like yourselves. And I think that that's really powerful, that unfortunately just in everyday life you don't have that necessarily ease of accessibility. So I definitely think that that's a really awesome aspect that you guys have probably found to be really great.
Yeah, I really find it interesting, because I kind of see both of your perspectives. Like, growing up, I really wanted to be a part of the social media world. I really wanted to post everything online, have as many followers as possible. But I started to realise that I was like neglecting my like real life friendships, and like maybe the people that I'm putting on this persona to don't really actually, you know, care about my life in a way. So I actually went through and deleted like a lot of like the people that I don't really talk to, or like the people that I know that I'm not really going to see in a couple months. So I kind of see Chloe's perspective, how like, you know, sometimes you do get a bit of FOMO from like not being like an influencer or not creating all this content. But at the same time, like, sometimes it's okay not to be like the most popping person online.
It's about appreciating what you have, and like, if you, at the end of the day, like, if you're happy in where you are and you're happy with the people that are around you, like appreciate that, and like understand that, you know, you don't have to like go crazy online and try and like step out. But I was going to say, with that being said, how do you feel like finding that separate community that is online, do you feel like it's helped you kind of not find your identity, because I feel like that's such a personal journey, but do you feel like having this perspective of like this almost broader view of people has like informed your like growing identity? Like, it's...
I think, kind of having like, it's definitely talking to people with like different perspectives, different experiences growing up, it's definitely been able to like change my worldview on sort of things. And you guys know that I'm very like stubborn and very opinionated. Yeah. So being able to see how other people sort of live and how other people sort of think about other things, it's definitely opened my mind. And also I grew up in a very like religious family. So even just, you know, sometimes there's this like internal sort of like thing against like certain groups of people, or maybe I'm not educated on certain issues. So being able to talk to people that are having those experiences, personally I found made me like open up to the world and see things in a different way. Did you sort of feel?
Yeah, I definitely think that it opens your eyes to just a whole other, like kind of like as Dante said, once you kind of get past high school, it's like you realise like there's so many different people out there, different backgrounds. Like it's really amazing how like it's all just kind of at our fingertips now.
And I think it's really interesting because I think it's happening. I think it's good for like our generation as a whole to have this kind of massive, broader perspective that can allow us to like inform our identities and kind of these worldviews. Because I think that back in the old days, like you would be stuck in your small town for high school, and then if you were lucky enough, you'd go to uni, and that was kind of your escape, and then that broadened your worldview. But these days, like kids are getting younger and younger. Like I know that there are kids who are like 13, 14, who like their friend group of 6 people is comprised of 2 people in Australia, 2 people in America, 2 people in Canada. Yeah. And they're like the bestest friends ever. That's the high school friend group, but like all they do is talk online.
Yeah.
And I think that even that is, it's just so important in kind of like informing your identity and growing up and hearing different perspectives from people, and it allows you to not kind of get stuck in a circle of people with the same opinions.
Yeah.
And you kind of get to break out of that and move forward and learn and grow and just hear different perspectives, which is so important.
Yeah.
Do you guys find, well, being more savvy online, so to speak, that, and coming from an identity perspective, do you find it almost conflicting, like when you've got your real world self versus a community that you really identify with online, and like is there a clash, is there a disconnect, like you said, growing up in a religious family or town versus the people that you might connect with online? Like, is there a bit of a clash with, that kind of identity forming in, your teen years?
I definitely think like for me early on, like when I was pretty new to social media, I definitely felt a clash. Like I felt I had to put on this persona. I mean, there's been times where like I've posted on my Instagram highlights that I love this song, but no, it was only because I wanted to like sort of show that I was like into a certain thing or like had this certain identity, which was not me. But I think it's, as I've like sort of grown and gotten used to social media, I've learned that like there's no use to really having a sort of fake identity online or a fake persona online, because at the end of the day, like people want to see who you are, and if you're just like being a carbon copy of someone else, it's a hard thing to keep up, and I think it would actually take a toll on you. So I definitely have learnt to sort of try and just be my authentic self. What about you?
I think it's that same kind of thing. Like it comes back to like with community and building and like reaching out, it gives you that opportunity to like you don't kind of have to stick where you were. Like you can kind of like experiment a little bit, and maybe like sometimes like we talk about values and we talk about like identity, but sometimes you have to like do stuff to realize that's not what it is as well, which I think is another benefit of that online community as well. Like maybe you're like, okay, cool, maybe I do want to like try doing like cooking, and I'm like gonna go and like join like all these cooking groups and and then maybe like you're like, oh, maybe like I don't really like cooking, but I think that that's an important part as well. That's like experiencing those different experiences that can like,
it's a good way to kind of get out of your comfort zone and try something new.
Yeah. Do you think that there's like a sort of line in terms of how much you share about yourself and your identity online?
Yeah, I feel like that's tricky because, again, I feel like it's really subjective.
Yeah.
Someone like me who is more private, and I don't necessarily share all that much, I would personally, for me, like there's a line, but for someone else there might not be, and it's kind of a grey area. But I think that above everything, I think that safety is the number one thing.
Yeah.
Especially for young people, because when you get caught up in this idea of we share everything, we post everything, people know what I'm having for breakfast, people know where I go out for dinner. It's like, I don't know, it's sometimes it can be a bit like not everything needs to necessarily go online. Just, from my perspective, being, just a little bit more in tune with not needing to necessarily share everything about yourself, especially when you are younger, because you don't know necessarily who's going to have access to what you're putting out there. I just think it's about being aware of what it is that you're actually putting out there.
Yeah.
I was going to say, there's a Billie Eilish quote that I always think of that I heard at like an interview ages ago where she was like, and whatever you do, like, don't post your feelings online, which is like, and you can take that out of context and you can take it, but what I got from it was that it's like, at the end of the day, like being online and being open online is really great, but also there is that line, and like there is some things that is better for you to kind of just talk to people in person and deal with in person, instead of kind of dropping the bombshell online and kind of having like letting people in like a little bit too far. Like there's something to be said about like chatting and having these genuine conversations with the people who you love, but you don't necessarily need to, like the people that you aren't as close with or people that you maybe never even talk to who are with you online, like they don't necessarily need to see that far in, because it's a vulnerability that opens you up to a lot of stuff on the back end as well.
Yeah, I think there's so many things online, like so many positive things to being online. But I think once you post something out there onto the internet, it gives people like the feeling that they are entitled to have an opinion on your life.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think my line is kind of anything that I don't want people to have an opinion on, or anything that, is something really vulnerable to me, I personally just wouldn't post, because it's hard to really, once you post it, it's hard to really say to someone, no, you're not allowed to say that. And although you can delete comments, I think also, sometimes it's good to keep a bit of yourself private, and just to, your close family and friends.
And I think that's like social media, like the platforms themselves are designed to drive engagement. So like when you post stuff, the platforms are designed to facilitate conversation around that, which you have to kind of understand. Like when you post something, everything on that platform is telling everybody to interact, to like it, to comment on it, to share it, to send it to someone else, to like, that's what they're designed to do, is designed to create conversation. And if it's something that you kind of don't want everybody to be talking about, then maybe it's not something that you want to share there. But everyone's still thinking about what you posted last night. It's like a whole thing. And it's like maybe those conversations, maybe you just need to have them with your close friend group instead of kind of dropping that in the middle of that online space.
So I definitely have kind of learnt and appreciated more perspectives of other people.
I agree with what you're saying. I think that's an interesting point. It's like you get all these different perspectives. And I think as well that there's a lot of pressure on young people, especially when we're young, to like be like masters of what we're doing as well, and kind of like not make mistakes, and like we're the generation of social media, like but like realistically, and especially like for kids who are younger in high school and stuff like that, like you don't really know what's going on. Like you're kind of just working it out as you go, and we were working it as you go, and like you're going to make mistakes, and you're going to make mishaps that maybe aren't part of your identity, but it's about how you like learn from that and how you come back from that, and knowing that that's like, it's okay to make mistakes like that online. Like it is going to happen. But it's about kind of how do you come back from that, and how do you navigate afterwards? Like do you have to apologize? Do you have to, how do you navigate that kind of space afterwards?
Yeah, I feel like when it comes to constructing an identity online as well, it can be really tricky for more impressionable audiences or for younger people, when we're kind of constantly sent all these mixed messages from, say, influencers who are living like these really insane lifestyles, and they might actually be the same age as you. They might be 15, 16, but they've, just found so much fame online, and so you think, oh, well, why can't that be me? Like, and you want to take steps to, get to that point. But I think it's really important to remember when being online is to remember a lot of what is shared online is the highlights reel, and it's not necessarily always the reality of life. And so I think it's really important to not only just look up to those people who kind of promote those kind of lifestyles, and to kind of stay in check with what is true to you, and remembering that, you know, your life is just as exciting and brilliant as someone, you know, living up, you know, as an influencer. And I think that can be really tricky to keep in check.
It's so important for your mental health, I think, too. And like you might get told, like people older than you, like, just take breaks, don't look at it, da da da. But I think more than that, it's harder to say, but for your mental health, and this is what I kind of did that really helped as well when you're like navigating that online space and you're learning, is trying to control your own influences as much as you can. Like it's almost like like if your phone is like your daily newspaper, like the front page of your newspaper doesn't need to be something that's making you sad every day.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that learning how to control your influences in your own like online space is such an important thing. And once you learn how to do that, you'll end up, like mental health wise, you'll end up being a lot happier, because if you surround yourself kind of with people who are outputting positive energy, whether that's in person or online, which I think people get lost in. They're like, well, I'm just like following all these people. But like, if you try and only keep the people that you're following and that you keep staying up to date with that are kind of aligning with your values, whether you want to be self-expressive, whether you want to be creative, whether you just want to be like funny, or you just want to be like some people that are aligning with your values and trying to kind of keep yourself in that positive energy, so the stuff you're seeing is making you happy, and it's not kind of, you're not like comparing and you're not like doing all of that sort of stuff.
I think it makes it easier then to feel more comfortable in establishing your own identity when you're able to see people who are like you, or do, you know, similar things, or are a part of communities that you also want to be a part of. I think that keeping that circle more, closer to your values, I think can be really beneficial in forming an online identity.
Instagram has a great feature. You can mute people, you can restrict how much you see from them. There's all sorts of things that you can do to sort of make sure that, you know, your mental health and your sense of identity and self-worth is looked after. Because at the end of the day, you're on social media. Social media is supposed to be a fun place. You don't need to sort of minimize who you are just because you want to be following all these random people.
And that's what, like, I think that like in young kids especially, you underestimate how much power you have to control your experience. Like, you can control a lot of the experience that you get online. You don't have to be like a victim of the algorithm. You can kind of do your best to tailor it, to make it a positive experience, to where every time kind of you're in that space, you are having like a good time. Like, something good is happening, like you're seeing something you want to see, like you're having a positive time with like positive people, positive energy. It ends up being good for your life, instead of being this kind of drainer that's not good for your mental health and stuff like that.
Yeah, how do you guys go about kind of navigating those spaces online that can be really draining? Like, how do you guys kind of digest that?
I think it's an interesting one, because I think that it's a lot about trying to separate yourself from it as much as you can. And I think it's easier said than done, 100%. But it's also like, it comes back to like understanding that there's people behind everything that is said online. Like, there's people behind it, and you have to come at it from like a place of empathy. So even if you like see stuff, you're like, and this is what I do, is kind of like, you probably shouldn't have said that, but also like, I do kind of feel bad for you, because you must be in a crazy place to be able to even be like in that kind of like space, to be like going that crazy or being that like hateful or whatever online. And then it's about like separating yourself from it. So whether that's like you're unfollowing or something, and what that does is it builds that community, because sometimes you can get lost in that word and you're like, well, I want a community, but I don't know what that means, and I don't know how I get there. But it's those little steps that you take, where it's like, if you see something you're not a fan of, or you see something you don't like, it's just like separating yourself from it, and slowly, eventually, you will tailor your own online community. Will just be people who you would actually want to hang out with and actually want to spend time with, instead of just what's popular or like what your friends are following and stuff like that.
When the pandemic was first happening, like, it was all about, you know, coronavirus, people losing their jobs, things like that. And while it was important to stay informed, I had to sort of take a step back, because it was taking a toll on my mental health. And I think sort of realising when you're in this loop and knowing when to take a step back is one of the ways that you can sort of preserve your mental health and preserve like your identity and who you are. And even another thing is like, as a Black woman, I always see like, you know, different things that are going on.
Sometimes it is great to reach out to people if you have a circle like that in person, but sometimes it's not that easy. Like sometimes young people's only support circle is online. Like that's all they feel that they kind of have to talk to and people that kind of understand them. So what do you guys feel like the way to go about being safe around those kind of relationships are?
I think that, again, when it comes to safety, it can be tricky when your only circle might be predominantly online, which is really common, especially for young people, and we connect so much with others online. So I think it's important, probably from a safety and privacy perspective, to make sure that you do trust the people that you are reaching out to and are, you know, sharing with. So I would definitely keep it contained within, you know, whether it's personal messages or small group chats, rather than putting it out there to anyone and everybody who could have access to that kind of private information. So I think, making sure that the people that you do have in your circle that you do trust and have your best interests at heart, I think that that's really important.
Yeah, and I would just say, like, be intentional about what you share, what you say to other people online. Although you can build those relationships, maybe save them for, like, when you see them in person or that sort of thing. I think that sometimes we can easily get carried away with, you know, this is the first, like, really, the first person that understands me or knows what I'm going through. But sometimes, you know, you can get catfish, you can get your information shared by other people. So, be intentional is basically what I'm trying to say.
That's what I was going to touch on as well. I think that especially if it's like some of your closer friends, you form those relationships online, like especially if you're kind of super emotional and you're having like an emotional moment and you want to share that with them, I think it's important to do it over like call. Text is normally, stuff can get taken out of context, and then it can be looked back on later without that emotion, and you can kind of be like, not why did I say that, but it can kind of look silly out of context of the moment. So I think that especially if that's kind of your support system, it's important to try and have those conversations. If you can't be face to face, at least on a call, or like actually as conversationally instead of just via text messages or just like via like typed chats, because I think that it comes across so much more genuine having someone actually listen to you. And because when you're taking someone, you kind of don't know if they're actually listening or if they're like half doing this, half doing something else, in and out, like they're not really paying attention. Like actually having someone's attention and letting them listen to you can be really freeing. But I think that that's super important, that it's done in a genuine conversation way and kind of not just like over text, and then like they can screenshot it and send it wherever, or they can screenshot it and it can be taken out of context and stuff like that. I think is super important.
I think another interesting thing as well with being online is that, and having smaller groups and being part of those communities, is that sometimes people might share in those groups a personal issue or a story or something that they're having trouble with, and then other people kind of reach out to them and share, you know, their opinions and advice, and you can kind of get your advice kind of from that without having to be the one to kind of put yourself on the line. I've actually found that really helpful. Like I'm in a few like local girl groups, and it's like us girls supporting each other when someone's like a bit unsure about something, or even something innocent like recommendations or things like that, and someone puts it out there, and then everyone kind of gets involved, and then you can kind of learn from other people sharing their experiences that might be really similar to yours. Yeah,
that is super important. I think the last kind of thing that we're going to touch on is that around community identity, and like we've all grown so much since we were like younger, but what would you kind of say to your like 14, 15-year-old self? You're in year 8, you're in year 9. What would you say to that person about kind of finding your community and finding your identity through this online world?
Patience.
I just don't think, I would tell my younger self that, you know, you don't have to keep up with the trends, keep up with what everyone's doing, and just sort of be, you know, just always show that everything you're doing. Sometimes you can just find little by little what, you know, you like and what, you know, piques your interest, rather than just basically following what everyone's doing. And then my other advice would just be, again, make sure that if you're putting something out online, it's something that you would be happy for other people to potentially have an opinion on. But yeah.
Yeah, I think definitely it would, like, talking to my younger self, I would say just remember that it's okay to have, you know, to not want to follow the trends or to be a little bit different or to not be online much at all. I think it's okay as long as it's your personal choice and that you feel comfortable with that.
Yeah, and I think like that's the same for me. I think that it's all about like doing, and I think you'll find this a lot when people kind of give advice to their younger selves, and especially through like an online lens. It's that it's like follow your passions and follow what you want to do, even if that's different from what feels like your whole world, but reality, you're in high school and you know like 20 people. So like what seems to be your whole world is this such tiny, narrow view, and there's so much more out there. And if you just kind of follow what you want to follow instead of what you were saying, instead of kind of just like riding along and being on the back of what the 20 people that you know also want to do, like just follow what you want to do and be confident in the fact that that's kind of your lane. And then just engage in that, like really delve deep into, you know, what you're doing and like why you want to be there. And the rest will come. Like if you go into something like that with positive intentions, like it'll come back around and it'll end in positive experiences.
Thanks so much for watching.
Hope you learned something.
See you online.